Hey everybody, this is Tony UV, CEO at Versprite, and I am very honored to be your keynote speaker to close out BSides Goa 2024. I promise that this talk is going to be truly a B-Sides talk in the sense of introducing some thought-provoking ideas, reflections on our industry, and especially as we look into how geopolitical realities are reshaping the cybersecurity industry. A little bit about myself. I'm a Cornell graduate from 1998. I'm the founder and CEO of Versprite, which is an international consultancy firm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, focusing on cybersecurity services. I'm also the founder of UltraCloud, which is a CSPM tool dedicated and focused on the SMB and startup community. Also founded VS Staffing, which is a global IT and cybersecurity talent cultivator for multinational companies worldwide. I'm the co-author for Process for Attack Simulation and Threat Analysis. It's a publication book that my colleague and I, Marco Morana, published in 2015. And today it's one of the most formidable threat modeling methodologies that have been adopted by both governments, universities, and enterprises worldwide. I have been leading the Atlanta OWASP chapter since 2008. I've also been one of the BSides Atlanta organizers, and I'm currently the CREST Vice Chair for Global Pen Testing Committee for the CREST organization based out of the UK. I'm a former CISO multiple times over and a senior leader in Fortune 50 enterprise security programs. Today's talk is going to be following really kind of a couple different major tenets of coverages. First of all, I want to begin with some condolences. I'll get into that in a second. Number two, we're going to talk about the status quo of where security is today and reflecting on some of the challenges that have brought us to where we are, both things that we as professionals have shot ourselves in the foot, and then looking at a little bit about the geopolitical landscape and how that is reshaping our industry into something a little bit more complicated. First, my sincerest condolences for not being there in person. I have been longing to be there in Goa to do this exit or closing keynote, but unfortunately through unforeseen visa issues, I am stuck here. So hopefully this raises the level for me to be able to deliver something insightful for all of you to take away and put a cherry on top of what I hope has been a very rewarding time at BSides Goa. But let me express my condolences to the passing of data privacy and InfoSec. InfoSec are prior designation for what is now today cybersecurity. And in the adage of marketing professionals all over the world, if something doesn't work, just rebrand it. So from InfoSec to cybersecurity, here we are. But heartfelt condolences to both those facets that have really defined a lot of our professions. You might be saying, well, this is a little bit dark, and I wasn't really ready for this as part of a closing ceremony takeaway, but let me provide some data for you. And this is just looking at the top 50 data breaches from 2004 to 2021. Overall, we've done a poor job industry-wide in InfoSec to be data stewards of consumer data. There's been a lot of businesses that have made a lot of money in receiving consumer information and leveraging that information for financial services, for banking, for retail, for advertising, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So 17.2 billion is just among the top 50 data breaches. There's been systemic failures on both the commercial and government side, regulation, compliance side alike, a lot of negligence, and really it's a lot of us trying to put a shine on oftentimes security silver bullets in eye candy over actual substance. So InfoSec, thank you for the memories. We will miss you. Now, data privacy and InfoSec have both been attributed to a lot of rotten security tomatoes, if you will, in our ecosystem. And one of my favorite case studies is the story of Norse. If you Google Norse and Brian Krebs, I invite you to please read that whole publication. But I was at this conference where I had the lanyard around my neck. I think it was around 2015. And, the part of the problem in our ecosystem is that there is a lot of eye candy that's being offered. RSA is around the corner in just a week or two. And there's a lot of gullible buyers, security leaders that are wined and dined, and they're basically consuming these dashboards as like a form of like hard drugs. Is there some level of, thought-provoking analysis behind the data? Well, in this case, there wasn't. And what's interesting with Norse is that a lot of the actual company was just a bunch of smoke. And, there was a lot of it had to do with half-hearted tech entrepreneurs, seed investors that wanted to basically, try to make Norse the next Splunk or the next, major cybersecurity company, product managers that were there for the ride, marketing professionals that were all for it. I still remember going to RSA, seeing a lot of the fanfare on the floor, and the executive team that, realizing that all this is happening, are still pushing ahead. Listen, as a CEO for a company and also a product company, I understand the push for marketability. But as, really a service sector that is security, we are serving businesses, we are serving the needs of those that are confining their data into our hands, into our networks, into our platforms. We have to raise the stakes. But there's a problem today that is executives that are too focused on the exit and not focusing on the problem that they're trying to solve. So who sits back and enjoys everything? Well, a lot of it is in marketing. And I don't mean to villainize marketing. I have a lot of friends that are in marketing. But there is some level of responsibility that we did not do in the prior days and ages, and we still don't do. There's a lot of tech companies out there that unfortunately are looking for that exit, right? They're looking to improve EBITDA, and they're trying to improve, earnings per share for publicly traded companies, and they're focusing on that exit. But what this does is it introduces a major economic problem for a sustainable supply chain of vendor solutions and services for companies that need our help in the space of cybersecurity. Now, most recently, Rubrik just went and had their IPO, and we're going to see some takes from the CEO. $500 million in marketing. There's a lot of examples I can use after nearly 30 years of ITIS experience. But suffice to say is that we need to build sustainable solutions that are focused on fixing problems and not necessarily just on exiting. We'll get to all of that more in a second. Now, on the data privacy side, again, this is the condolences section of my talk. Data privacy is dead, and it's been dead. There was a moment where it resurrected, but it really turned into a zombie state where it was just being puppeteered again by nation-state actors, governments, big evil corporations, right? Evil Corp, right? Mr. Robot reference there. Data is the new currency that doesn't devalue. It will never go down in value. It is the new, and it will be the pervasive altcoin, Bitcoin, whatever you want. Data privacy is dead, and data is the currency that governments, businesses, hackers, darknet operators, and data brokers all want, because there's so much that can be done with data. Now, if you're still thinking that I'm overly pessimistic with all this, well, just this week, the New York Times unveiled that General Motors had accidentally enrolled millions of people into its OnStar Smart Driver program. Now, if you've been in the industry for a while, how many times do you see things like this, right? Where it's either, a misalignment of security control with data privacy, it's a lot about consent management. Am I authorized to have this data? And of course, it's going to vary by country, by state, by international laws. But the reality is that these major multinational corporations, they pay these fines, which are a fraction of their overall profitability on this same data. They get the data to understand behavior, tendencies, consumerism better, so they can market better. So this is, it might seem like just simply a single scenario for General Motors, but there's plenty of examples. And the reality that we all need to come to grips with is that we continue down this road collectively, right, as part of being a part of these organizations where we choose not to do the right thing, or we don't consider the right data privacy threat model for where consent mismanagement can actually happen. Now, it goes well beyond data. I'm not talking about names and addresses.
How do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
This particular example, is
Senator, we run
facial
ads.
recognition, and all of this is data. It's physiological expressions now is very interesting data, especially as more and more surveillance happens, in our homes, around our homes, in our schools, in public transportations, in stadiums, etc. There's interest for both private enterprises to know data as it relates to physiological expressions when they're maybe looking at a vendor that's maybe selling, some fanware. All this stuff is data that is predictive information for major organizations and governments to profit for both, seemingly benign economic goals, but also it could easily be used for other types of less altruistic goals. So in the end, my condolences for the loss of data privacy. Collectively, we should all have some level of deep sorrow, also for the end of InfoSec. And now we've rebranded, right? We've drunken from the marketing Kool-Aid and rebranded, as I look at this number of 9.7 trillion just from 2013 in all of the countries that have been lost a lot of data. It's interesting to look at this data, right, and see the amount of data tied to different types of countries. You go to Kenya at 134,000 different records lost, and then you go somewhere to United Kingdom, which is 140 million. So what are the interests there? Who are the ones that are profiting this? A lot of it has to do with economic factors. A lot of it also has to do with things related to strategic geopolitical themes, which we will get into. But let's talk about right now. Let's talk about what are the challenges. And part of the challenges that we have is that we have broken threat models. We're calling things a threat without really understanding, a lot of what that means. And we're applying still a lot of stale security principles in this new world.
Rubrik is a different kind of cybersecurity company. We help our customers keep their businesses up and running even when they had a successful cyber attack or cyber breach, so that kids can go to school, so that hospitals can still operate, so that when you swipe credit card, money comes out, even if the business is impacted. That is different from the traditional cybersecurity that is focused on stopping attacks. We assume that attacks will happen. You can't stop the unstoppable. How do you continue to operate the business even when you have successful attacks and breach?
Now, I hope everyone could hear that, but if you weren't able to hear the audio for various reasons, basically the CEO at Rubrik recently had a pretty important week. They came out with their initial public offering this week, and there's a lot of things that stand out. The aspect that he mentioned that we are a different cybersecurity company, which is common for most cybersecurity companies to say. Why? Well, obviously he has a job to do as a CEO. Now he has potentially a lot of investors, institutional investors, private investors. So he has to build this momentum. So that's understandable. This is definitely not a ding on similar CEOs that have to do this, right? But peeling back what was said, there's a lot of inconsistencies that are advertised in the threat model where, saying that, yes, there is preventative failures, and we do recognize that we are going to have some get by that could actually compromise companies' data and through extortion. But the promise, the silver bullet of saying that we help schools to be able to keep going to school. Please, someone provide me the precedents of the litany of schools that have been, unable to continue operations because of ransomware, right? It's not as much as the financial sector. It's definitely not as much as the healthcare sector. Now, of course, he's in the moment. He's on CNBC Live. He's in the hot seat. But we collectively, right, have to be able to evangelize what is the accurate threat model for what is going on. Other things that are in the water are systemic flaws in how we consider to train ourselves, right? How we consider to be adept at our jobs. Cybersecurity training, certifications, being touted as the means and ways to be able to get into the industry and to be successful. And oftentimes that's a misnomer, because there's truly an expectation by a lot of students that begin to do this, take the certifications, and are like, show me the money. I know I am now equal to someone that's been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years. And there's a lot of unrealistic things, especially as it relates to threat models that are distorting our real focus. Again, my condolences, but we need to change. So risk is completely foobarred, right? F'd beyond all recognition. And it's interesting that, over the past, really 27 years of ITIS, but really the past 15 or 18 years squarely within cybersecurity, we don't get risk. We talk about risk like CVSS and CWSS and EPSS, and we want someone else to handle that. So we're like, no, you want me to understand how my security finding relates to your business product? I don't want to touch that. But let me tell you about things that are comfortable. And this is the problem, is that we're just talking amongst ourselves, right? We have these conferences, and maybe a new opportunity. I still remember, Versprite being, one of the above and beyond supporters in Las Vegas for the original BSides in Las Vegas. The kind of the grassroots, the counterculture ideologies that defines BSides. We need to change the game. We need to go out to these conferences. What happens if we do training at these conferences, but just for non-security people, but we do it for free? And yes, the vendors have sponsored it, but we need to change something because we get together and we just talk amongst ourselves. We need to be able to also come to the recognition that risk is not going to come from a dashboard, a tool vendor, or a revered CVSS score. This is, if you've worked with MITRE, phenomenal organization, largely supported by DHS funding. They don't know your business. They don't know your customer's business. How can we simply just throw over the fence, technical security related risk findings that are non-contextual to our audiences? So we need to do better. Extortion is a great example. Oftentimes we need to understand the threat model for extortion and ransomware as an attack vector for realizing the goal of extortion as a threat. You wouldn't, for example, extort a PR marketing firm if we were all cyber criminals, would you? Because there's no urgency in the business model. But transportation, healthcare, shipping manufacturing, it relies on that. Let's move stuff out. And if you pigeonhole that, then you're hurting somebody, right? And this is where the business model of extortion from a cyber criminal sense makes sense. We need to understand that as cybersecurity professionals.
Is coming to grips with the idea that there will be attacks a sign of failure when it comes to attack security?
It is actually a sign of a strength.
So I stopped it there because I don't know, again,
is coming to grips with the idea that
the audio is working, but this particular segment, I love the question by the CNBC commentator. He had a sincere, look on his face. All right, so you said attacks are going to happen. Does this mean that we failed in cybersecurity? And then the response was that, no, this is a sign of strength. We're moving beyond stopping. Now we're looking to response. You can see my concern about the marketing spin that we have as an industry. And again, this is not villainizing anybody. The man is the CEO for a company that now has public investors, institutional investors, right? It's shaping the future of his company. He has to be able to make defensive comments. This is universal. So please do not take this as like a ding to Rubrik at all or the executive team whatsoever. But as we consume this and we recognize the little bit of the marketing that's needed, right, for the public, but we need to be able to not ingest this as practitioners and say, yeah, let's move away from prevention and let's focus on response. The fact is we need to improve prevention. We need to leverage automation for prevention. We need to improve contextualization for prevention. And oftentimes we're stuck in our own security fields. As an industry looking at, the macro issues, status quo today, we have all these things that I don't personally understand. These self-gratifying CISO award ceremonies that you're oftentimes paid to play, by the way. You pay or you have a vendor sponsor, you get an award. What are we celebrating? If you look at all the data breaches If you look at the commentary from a CNBC analyst who's not in the space and saying, have we failed? What are we celebrating? We're rebranding everything is what we're doing. AppSec, remember AppSec, application security? We have cloud security posture management. Now we have application security posture management. You have zero trust. You had principles of zero trust, honestly, going back 15, 20 years ago with security architecture, right? Just poor execution. We're rebranding everything. And this should be a concern whether you're a student, whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a vendor, whether you're an entrepreneur. We're celebrating the wrong things. We're celebrating certificates and award ceremonies, and we're taking our eye off the ball. We're celebrating and focusing on valuation models, multiples on our businesses so that we can cash out. But this is going to have a detrimental effect to the ecosystem that is supposed to protect healthcare. Think about your own personal family members, right? That are, innocently confiding on technology and services, right? We know better that sometimes there's a lot of things that aren't really up to snuff, up to par. Bug bounty hypocrisies. Let me dive on this for a second. Before, and I used to come from a banking sector. When you would do a pen test for a banking financial institution, you wanted to know who's doing the pen test. Have they been background checked? What is their prior, experience? Bug bounty hypocrisies funded, again, by venture capital, really circumvents all that. It's opening up the kimono for, hey, let's have a global crowdsourcing platform that's going to lower the unit costs of exploitation. And we don't know really who's knocking on the door, right? There's people that are evaluating the submissions for what is deemed a flaw. And then oftentimes the true passionate researchers are getting screwed in those deals. A lot of the true positives are not being paid out, right? You're pissing off researchers, generally not a good idea. And on top of that, you really don't know who you're allowing to basically, do things onto your product or application or network. And what's to say that someone finds something that's pretty detrimental? Are they going to really cash out for a $5,000 payout? Or are there opportunities on the black market to be able to get that to be a $10,000 payout or a $50,000 payout? Things don't make sense. And honestly, a lot of the things that we're doing today is, let's talk about attacks and SBOM. We are oftentimes the attack framework is a great post-exploitation attack library for your threat model. But not getting as much attention is the software bill of materials, especially for companies that are writing software. Why? Because it's easier to take attack and put it into tools and then have the dashboard than it is to inventory what are we running and with the implications of that embedded software into the downstream effects into our application architecture. So this is a challenge. You didn't get this remark on the video because I didn't see it through, but one of the questions later from a female commentator was, where are attacks coming from? He begins with nation states and goes all the way down to teenagers in basements that are flipping their finger to big government and big enterprises. I'm sure they're wearing a hoodie as well. So this is where we're at. This is where we're at today. We need to depart from this status quo. And we lost our hacker way. And, this is, I think things will get worse before they get better. This is a new second-year roundtable of venture capital and cybersecurity that's taking place. And a lot of these rhetorical questions like, are we funding AI applications or AI infrastructure? If applications, how do we make sure that the product has access to truly unique and proprietary data? These are rhetorical questions, right? We need to be able to address the full stack of how AI can reasonably be adopted and matured at different times. It's been an interesting week in the market, financial markets. A lot of tech players, forget cybersecurity, have had their financial, reportings, and even Tesla has said there's been some challenges in AI rollouts. Now, speaking of AI rollouts, I promised you, what does this have to do with geopolitical climate changes? We are definitely having a climate change. within cybersecurity that's going to be impacted by tech and security, really discrepancies in availability of who can really build out generative AI. The giants of tech like Microsoft, Tesla, Amazon will continue to be able to have the means and ways. But what this should trigger in everyone's mind is like, what about those countries that can't afford this tech? What about the companies that don't have this level of competitive, budget to buy some of this tech? Right now in the market, everyone will advertise some form of AI adoption, but only the elite will dominate. And so we're going to see AI to be truly transformative in reshaping different industries, primarily in where there's a lot of labor pools in the blue market segment, but also in marketing services, in software development services, where you have the opportunities for AI to really drive the full stack of secure software development lifecycle. There's a tsunami of work displacement ahead. And if you're in this industry, if you're just coming in, or if you're a veteran and you don't want to run to the hills, dig down, because it's going to be a game changer over the next couple of months. We're going to see a lot of changes that are going to displace tech, and the richer countries are going to find more use cases for it. Poorer countries are just simply going to be consuming what's being built. Now, there's a great opportunity for the East. I've found the past 3 weeks traveling all throughout APAC, Asia Pacific, and it's interesting and it's a sharp contrast. You see on the West a lot of societal really decay. There's a lot of faction groups at each other's throats. This is going to lead to a lot of things that affects supply chain, supply labor pools, what's being taught, sustainable, technology and sustainable, pools of talented labor. The East doesn't have the same perils right now, and it has an opportunity truly to take the discipline that it has in its cultural norms to be able to thrive to a new level where AI can take economies and entrepreneurs from the East to a totally different level. But in a global AI disequilibrium is definitely ahead. Look at the chart at the top right. So Asia Pacific, you see the jump between 2023 and 2028, signifying one of the largest jumps outside of still North America, where you see a big jump still between 2023 and 2028, where you have market consolidation, you have focus on cybersecurity, market development. But definitely in the East, there's a lot of opportunity, but we have to do it right. So contributing factors that hopefully the East can learn is to to do the right type of marketing, right? I say marketing is evil as kind of a tongue in cheek, but it's the right type of marketing. You know what sells? Is true authenticity. Versprite, the company that I founded, literally means true spirited. We have like 2 people in our sales team. You do good work, you find success. And if you're an entrepreneur and you have quality work, quality product, it's going to market. Tesla doesn't do a lot of advertising in the United States. GMC does. Venture capital necessitates returns. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're in this space, the problem we have with venture capital is that it's reshaping perspective and goals, where entrepreneurs want to focus too much on the exit versus actually being a game changer. And we need more game changing. Debt sheets, capital calls. What this does is it takes companies like Lacework and Wiz and Acquio in the CSPM market as an example, which is a familiar space for us, to be able to have to offer subscription fees that are unobtainable for mid-cap and SMBs. And it's elevating the cost of cybersecurity for big enterprises. So it's meanwhile, right, we have influencers and marketing companies that are altering the focus, right? They're glorifying a lot of whoever has the most marketing budget to support these, CISO awards or these very, self-patting on the back ceremonies. It's just adding to, the overall noise. And this is affecting really what as a global consumer markets what they're paying attention to, right? Gartner says go here, right? And so we have companies that are security startups that are put into a magic quadrant. And because people don't want to do the necessary analysis, they go with what a marketing entity says and the study says. And people don't realize that these services are pay to play. Whoever has the budget is going to be able to be at the forefront of what is deemed to be effective in cybersecurity solutioning. Venture exits lead to disruption in reliable, sustainable security processes. I can't say that enough. What this means is that you have companies, that are being backed by, Israeli-based startups or, Boston-based venture capitalists or private equity in the Bay Area. And it's creating a need for everything to focus at higher dollar subscription models, which makes the tech to be unobtainable even for enterprises that are in sectors that are not as mature, like manufacturing, like higher education. Meanwhile, we have separate problems in terms at an individual level, right? The certification business is absolutely booming. Certifications for everything, training for everything, but it doesn't funnel into milestone measurement, right? You get a certification, and a lot of people that are highly certified are unemployed. And so what's going to happen with the AI adoption is that a lot of the jobs that they're looking to get will actually be displaced through levels of automation. This is going to have huge implications and create a disequilibrium across the global market. Labor shortages will happen because the talent that we need is not there. The educational system in the West is getting worse, and a lot of people can't even afford to get in there. So your labor pools go down further, which means that supply goes down, and then the cost of finding the right people goes way up, which means that the products and fees have to go up as well.
Did you know Canada might be the first to introduce universal basic income? Judging by how fast AI is developing, other countries will need to move quickly from discussing policy to legislating. Why? Because everywhere you look, AI is threatening jobs. Klarna's replacing customer service agents, ChatGPT is replacing copywriters, translators, and more, and Devin AI is replacing software programmers. If that's not enough, Agility Robotics and Figure are replacing humans in warehouses and factories.
You're doing it because you're trying to affect the bottom line. And to fill labor gaps and everything else there. So that's where it's going to start.
And that right there is an argument for why governments and people need to start thinking about this now.
No.
That last comment there, and this is really the geopolitical aspect, right, is that we're on the precipice of refining AI. This past week on Wall Street, a lot of the major tech players recognize some of the challenges and timelines to rolling out AI, but efficiency will continue to happen. Hardware will improve. Here you have, Greg Brockman talking about the first NVIDIA DGX H200 in the world being opened up like a Christmas present at the OpenAI. You have the Tesla's Dojo cluster being unveiled, right? And then you have the concerns of what does this mean for labor pools? What does this mean for economies? What does this mean after the fact when there's labor displacements? And this notion that's being spoken about in Canada about a universal income, right? Where it's just this recognition that, listen, there's going to be a huge displacement of labor. And that labor cannot, in a timely fashion, go into alternative forms of a different labor market, a different pool. And so there's this aspect of universal income. With that is going to be dissension, maybe political turmoil, pressures on social welfare services that need to happen, right? And the other aspect that's super important, if there is an introduction of a universal income level, that means that the government now has an opportunity to be able to almost like, ear tag all the citizens that need to have that universal income. And they need to abide by certain different types of conditions. So the big brother phenomena is very much close at hand. This is a new dawn for cybersecurity. The implications of just doing what we've doing about dashboarding and security silver bullets and focusing on exit plans, there's more serious things at stake. And if you're passionate about what you do, I commission you to be able to think more seriously about how you can contribute to be able to influence a new dawn in cybersecurity. So I'll end with this. One last slide. One of the things, that I have in terms of recommendations, and there's three really recommendation tidbits I have. One is for the entrepreneur. And I say this to all my employees at Versprite. Passion over money. If you're passionate about something, everything else will follow. Success, financial gain. And even if it doesn't, the road of failing with passion is far better than the road of compromising security snake oil for dollars. Because at the end of the day, you have to go to sleep at night. Second, have a clear vision. If you're an entrepreneur sitting in the audience today, have a clear vision for what you are trying to build. And understand that failure is absolutely the best teacher. I've learned only from failures, and I love to fail. I love to fail because it makes me more resilient. If I fail, I will not fail in the same way ever again. So be focused on those things. Now, for the practitioner, student mindset forever. If you have the word expert or rock star awarded to you or in your profile, please take it out. That this is a new dawn in cybersecurity. No one, doesn't matter how long the tenure, doesn't matter all the accolades and accomplishments, no one is an expert. Student mindset. Number 2, develop a niche. Focus on your niche. Are you focusing on maybe securing the CI/CD pipeline? A lot of people aren't really thinking about that. So make that be your focus. What about, is it in more of threat intel? Is it in OSINT gathering? Find a niche and be a phenomenal practitioner. Still a student in that niche. Be a self-learner. This is an industry where you have to always continuously be learning. Learn from others. Learn about what sometimes even ignorant sayings teaches us, the temperature of what different practitioners should not be saying or what problems we have that we've kind of covered in this presentation. Automation is going to be a constant for the future. Don't shy away from it. And whatever you focus your niche on, be interested in automation. Be interested in efficiency, because I guarantee you right now, every industry is focusing on automation. Marketing, healthcare, grocer operations, inventory management, it does not matter. Automation is here to stay. Develop a roadmap for where you want to be as a practitioner and understand the threat model for what you're evaluating. If you're doing application security, if you're doing organizational enterprise security, do you understand and have you built a threat model that is fed from threats that are happening based upon the attack surface, the industry, the data flows of your model? This is super important. Now, for the enterprises, develop your threat model in a similar fashion and reasoning. Let your threat model encompass your security decisioning. Oftentimes, we run enterprises based upon, a framework. And as great as the International Standards Organization is, or the collaboration that exists from the National Institute of Standards and other forums, they don't know your business. They don't know your attack surface. They don't know your impact levels. Build your own threat model. My threat model is not your threat model. And that's super important credence to follow. Make sure that your security ecosystems that you're building are truly an ecosystem and not security islands. Oftentimes we buy and procure services and technology to solve problems. I need to solve a problem for endpoint protection. Buy, implement, done. You're not done because you haven't considered, data flows from that countermeasure. Have you ensured good data telemetry? Have you ensured great security automation that happens upon detection, right? Build an ecosystem. And lastly, develop a roadmap and understand your own threat model. The former CEO of Binance, CZ, always had this mantra of do your own research. And I think that's very important that now today, where there's misinformation campaigns, there's a lot of propaganda, we have to build we have to do our own research. And hopefully today's events and overall the trainings that you get from BSides Goa have allowed you to have some new ideas on what to research, what to continue onward, so that you can build an effective career, an effective product, and a more resilient enterprise. Thank you so much for your attention and your time. My regrets for not being there in person. I hope to visit the beautiful city of Goa very soon another time. If you do wish to follow up with me, please check out some of my social media contact information there, my email addresses and whatnot. But hope to see you all next time. Take care.